All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 16 with Max Barr. We are doing our Arkansas basketball preview for the 24-25 season. We're starting all of our team previews here for the SEC. Yeah, Max, Arkansas, a notable team heading into this season, as always, not just for our audience here at Southeastern 16, but certainly nationally as well. As John Calipari takes over as head coach and has put together, as you would expect, a very fine talented roster that has a chance to do a lot of big things this season in Fayetteville, and that is probably a welcome change for the Razorback fans who are trying to get that bad taste out of their mouth for how last season went there.
Yeah, not ideal last year, and we were at the forefront of that, Blake. What did we have them second in the SEC there?
Probably our fault that it
Let's
happened,
not revisit. Yeah, well, we'll get blamed anyways. But yeah, exciting off season, and there is the all the energy is right back in the program. I was talking to JC Hoops actually this morning. JC. We got not Alabama, excuse me. Got an Arkansas preview today. JC, do you got any nuggets for me? We've got quite a few nuggets here coming up, Blake. I'm excited about this one.
6-piece nugget coming up here. Maybe more than that. Maybe getting the 10-piece. We'll find out. But all right, let's jump in. As always, we're gonna discuss the team. We'll also give you our picks for X Factor, MVP, and kind of give you our season prediction range for Arkansas as well. But I mean, look, I think you have to start at the top here. Like you have to start with John Calipari because again, this is such a monumental move, not just for the SEC landscape, but for the national landscape because of everything we talked about. Cal had been in Kentucky forever. They had kind of hit a wall in terms of their NCAA tournament success. And now he comes in, I think, Max, and this to me is just as important as anything. We kind of have joked about like the Cal revenge tour and those kind of things. Cal's last stand, does it feel like how we phrased last year at Kentucky? Because, we're wondering, okay, is this guy really going to, be able to keep doing this without the frustration of the fans getting higher and higher in terms of their postseason success? But, this is an interesting spot for him because, yes, he can come in a lot more motivated, with something to prove here after, things went sour at Kentucky. But also, he is coming into a program that, if you look at postseason success in the SEC in recent years, Arkansas is right up there. Like, minus the Alabama Final Four run last year, like, Arkansas was kind of the team before last season that you just expected each year. Somehow they're going to find a way to get to the Sweet 16. Like, that had been the norm, right? Or they're going to get to the Elite Eight. And so, again, it's not like Cal's just going from one place to another that doesn't have the same high expectations. He's going to have a little bit more of a grace period here, but very high expectations for John Calipari. And I'm curious kind of how we see any of those things change in terms of maybe some of his, approaches to how, strategy, all those different things to try to, maybe take that next step to get back to where he was and having teams that were, making the second weekend of the tournament beyond every year. All right, Max, but before we continue, let's tell you about our friends at BetOnline. If you want to bet on, Max, those Arkansas Final Four National Championship odds this season, if you're calling the Hogs already, you can also maybe not call, maybe just, type it up with your fingers or something like that. You can't really call anymore, I don't think.
No.
But you can visit our friends at BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football and basketball, Max. We're going to add that in. Every stat, matchup, live odds during the games, it's all there. If you know your stuff, you can also play that $200,000 mega contest where you pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When it's over, head to the online casino, play some blackjack or poker. Over 150 slots games there as well. Head to their website today to get on the action. Bet online. The game starts here.
Yeah, well, when we talked to John Rothstein, he said, just kind of put it into perspective. Take the Arkansas label off the front of the jersey and, slap Kentucky on that. How highly are we talking about this team with all the talent? Just changing that perspective just a little bit to kind of, see, hey, BetOnline has these guys as a top 10 national champion favorite. Now, I know there's a little bit baked into the preseason odds and everything, but that holds some weight. All right. There is money coming in on Arkansas to win the national championship. That's holding them in the top 10 there. All right. If no one was betting on them, they would be dropping. That's how the odds work. So there is some national hope for this team in the postseason. But Blake, how do they do that? How do we get there? Well, if you look at Calipari's track record, there's one theme that he maintains through all of his successful seasons, and that's defense. Defense, 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 defense. Probably going to be a theme of this episode. I hate to be devil's advocate here, Blake. I hate to do it, but the numbers are what they are, and Calipari has not had a top 25 defense in the past 5 seasons. And when you look at this roster, kind of how it's made, Aidoo, Brazile, Thiero, we've got some shot blocking, we've got some defense. I think the talent here and the roster construction is here, Blake. They have what it takes to get back to that top 25 defense.
All right, so I'm going to give you the numbers quickly on that. So if you go throughout his entire, let's start with Memphis. All right, we're going to go back to the Memphis 2001 is where we're going to begin, because you got to go to Ken Pom, and Ken Pom doesn't go back to the UMass days. But let's just start at Memphis. All right, so Cal's teams who won 30 or more games, and I think most of these ended in them making at least the Sweet 16. So obviously there are championships, Final Four appearances, Elite Eights in there, but we just go back to all of Cal's teams throughout history since he started at Memphis. 33 wins in 2006. They finished 6th in defensive efficiency. 33 wins in 2007. They finished 10th in defensive efficiency. 38 wins in 2008. They finished 2nd defensive efficiency. 33 wins in 2009. They finished 1st in defensive efficiency. You see the theme here, Max. 2010, first year, Kentucky, 35 wins. They finished 6th in defensive efficiency. National champions, 2012, 38 wins. They finished 7th in defensive efficiency. I'm going to keep going here because like this trend holds. Final Four, the team that was 38-0, 2015, they finished 1st in defensive efficiency. 2017, they get to the Elite Eight, 7th in defensive efficiency. 30 wins in 2019, 8th in defensive efficiency, in case you thought there was going to be a change. So there you go. Like, you said it. That's it. Like, to me, if you're just going to do an Arkansas season preview and you try to make it as condensed as possible, which we never do here because we want to talk for 30 minutes because we love the game. If you want to, you can maybe just go to that and say, if we are going to be successful this year, if we're going to be a team that can advance into a scenario where we have a chance to make the Final Four, then you got to play defense, and you got to be one of the best defensive teams out there because the offense is going to take care of itself when we talk about some of these players because they do have a lot of talented players offensively, right? We've mentioned it this summer when you talk about everything that DJ Wagner can do now, running the show as the point guard. Even Boogie Flan, who will get his opportunity, a tremendous talent at point guard. Davis comes in. I mean, Johnell Davis is a first-team All-SEC player from day one, most likely. He can score the ball. We know that. Like we said, I think Thiero is going to be interesting to talk about in terms of his offensive development. Brazile can score. Aidoo can score. Like, take the guys off the bench, the other freshmen, like, they can score. But if Kentucky or I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, like, because we're talking Cal, it's going to happen, folks. I'm sorry. I apologize. He's been there so long. He was there for many, many years. If Arkansas is going to be a team that can win the SEC, win a national championship, make the Final Four, the offense will take care of itself. They got to get back to playing that elite-type defense at the very top because that has been the proven success for Cal with his best teams.
Yeah, and this might, before we kind of dive into the roster here and what the backcourt and front court bring matchup-wise, one thing I noticed, Blake, when looking through this roster and comparing it to the other SEC rosters, deceptively big. And I don't mean tall. I mean big, okay? DJ Wagner's listed at 195 right now. If he was just listed 5 pounds heavier at 200, Arkansas would be one of 2 or 3 teams. I believe Missouri and Ole Miss might be there as well. And there might be one more. There's not many. It's a handful of teams in the SEC that could start all 5 players over 200 pounds. Yeah, Arkansas would be one of those only teams with Wagner, Davis, Knox, Brazile, and Aidoo. Whether you want to throw in Billy Richmond, Thiero, or Big Z, it doesn't matter. All of those guys would be 200 pounds plus. And that's just a little factor that can go a long way over the course of a season with how physical we know the SEC can get. And I just feel like that hasn't even been mentioned with this Arkansas team. Deceptively strong, deceptively physical, this team here, Blake.
Well, and you got to be physical in the SEC, and we know that. And I think if you start with the backcourt, again, I mean, that is what fuels every team. A lot of standout front court players, but everything kind of gets started with your backcourt. And,
Yep.
like we said, I think we had a really good feeling that DJ Wagner was going to wind up at Arkansas once the change was made. We knew Flan was coming in. And then, of course, I still think Davis is the guy that I am just most intrigued by because we know what he was able to accomplish at FAU, and now he comes in and I think has a really big opportunity to where he can kind of be that go-to guy when they need those
Yeah.
moments where they get the ball to someone in these key situations. And I think like he's going to be able to score. And I think we may have did this in our starting lineup predictions, but if you're placing your bets now, I think there's a great chance he's the leading scorer for this team. And again, it's just because of what he's all put together. So yeah, I mean, he to me is going to drive everything, but I don't think you can underestimate the fact that also if you're looking at some of Cal's best teams throughout his tenure, he's had some really top tier point guards, and I think he's
Yeah.
got two available here in DJ Wagner and Boogie Flan. So
Yeah, and I was talking to JC this morning, and I was like, JC, I love Boogie Flan's offense. When you watch these practice clips that are starting to come out now, you're like, wow, this guy looks smooth offensively, but he's real skinny, 170 as a freshman. I was like, I kind of have a feeling that his minutes might be limited just because of his physicality and his defense. But I've also read, whether it's Adam Finkelstein or whatever recruiting expert is writing a scouting report on him, I've read a few times like he's lengthy. He's got a good stealing ability. His stealing numbers. He actually had a high steal rate in EYBL at 1.7 steals a game. So that's not bad at all. So I feel like when it comes to Big Boogie Flan, we might be overlooking him a little bit just because it's like, wow, they got DJ Wagner and they've got Johnell Davis. They're going to be running the show. Boogie might get a few more minutes than we thought. And I said this in our recruiting or our transfer video when Wagner committed. After Kentucky lost to Tennessee in early February, it was one of Wagner's, I think it was Wagner's third game he missed that year, and they had lost all three. So they lose to Tennessee, and the team now moves to 0-3 when DJ Wagner does not play. Calipari comes out in the post-game press conference and says simply, when he don't play, we don't win. That was a direct quote. And you had Reed Sheppard coming out after the game also, and Reed Sheppard, I'm going to butcher this, it's not word for word, but said something along the lines of we were all mixed up out there without DJ. So now you get a guy coming in as a sophomore breakout, even more experienced. I think DJ Wagner is going to be phenomenal. And then real quick on Johnell Davis, all the offensive numbers are there, 3-point shooting's there. What doesn't get talked about is this guy can guard 1 through 4. He just did it for years under Dusty May's small ball regime at FAU. He was playing the 4 defensively. I mean, this is a guard that is tough as nails. Johnell Davis just turned 23 in May. We're going to be entering March Madness. He's almost 24 years old. That's something you want to have leading your team.
yeah, and keep in mind too with Wagner. I mean, he was had that ankle injury too for
Yeah.
last year. Now he's healthy, good to go. I think you'll see that some of that last year at times, also just because he was a freshman, but I think you're going to see that was part of it too. So very high expectations for this backcourt. And the good thing is I don't think Davis is going to have to guard the 4 this year because I think Arkansas's got enough options to work with. They don't need him guarding 4s out there.
Nope.
I suppose they could if they need to, but I mean, really, that's where we look, at this front court, which certainly you have guys like Knox and Richmond as well, and you can kind of blend them into those kind of swing type guys. I think you could say they don't necessarily mold into the front court, but at least Knox with like the 6'6" size type guy. You mentioned that a minute ago. Like you got some good size with these guys. You can play multiple positions, but the big guys, like the big guys here that you look at with Thiero at 6'8", Brazile at 6'10", Aidoo at 6'11", Big Z at 7'2". I don't know that there's a better. I mean, I do know actually. I don't. I mean, maybe Alabama would like a word, and there's some other options I suppose as well. But I just look at those four names and I'm thinking, if you're slotting those guys in at the power forward center positions and knowing that Thiero can really kind of play anywhere, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, so you can put him anywhere you need to. But that is such the most intriguing group probably for me
Yeah.
of any two positions in the SEC this year. Like it's these guys right here in that power forward, 4-man center type role for these guys because I'm so curious to see what the minutes distribution is like. Knowing that Adou is going to start, feel 100% confident about that. Feel very confident Brazile is going to start, and I do think Thiero probably has a good chance to do that. We mentioned that in the starting lineup thing. They could either
Yep.
start him at the 3 if they wanted to, or they can just be that first guy off the bench that's going to give you exactly what they want. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so much to work with here that I'm so fascinated to see how a Jonas Aidoo develops under Cal. We mentioned some of the things where the thing Tennessee fans talked about what they do was some of those big games, right? Didn't have
Yep.
his best games against best opponents. How does that continue to develop? Brazile comes back to be on this team. How does his development work? Knowing that this guy felt like a surefire NBA lottery pick 2 years ago, the injury
Yeah.
happens. Last year was not what he wanted. So can he kind of, mold his game into what Cal needs him to be? And then Big Z's kind of, another similar situation where, and I know Cal's talked about this. I was reading the Blue Ribbon, preview about this. Brazile and Big Z, no threes. Keep these guys to use their size at 6'10 and 7'2. He doesn't want them stepping out and shooting a lot of threes. He wants them to focus on, again, being able to use their size, get easier points. So a lot to work with here, Max, in terms of this foursome, I think, in this range here.
Yeah. Real quick before I kind of dive in on the big guys, Karter Knox. Karter Knox. You might as well call him a big guy. This guy's
Yeah.
sitting 220 right now. This guy's sitting 220
He's had
as
some
a
Tyson
fresh.
chicken.
Yeah, he's had some Razorback nuggets. I'll tell you that. And he's listed at 6'6" out of high school. I've heard he's probably more like 6'7", 6'8". This guy's a tank. Okay, he's a tank. When you want to talk about physically ready out of this freshman group, Karter Knox, I've heard some really good things out of practice, some isolation work. He's gonna be a matchup nightmare. This is a big kid, and I don't really think it gets talked about like that because he led the EYBL in scoring the past 3 years with the 15U, 16U, 17U. You hear all about his scoring, all about his high volume threes. He is physical. Okay. And I think that I just wanted to emphasize how physical he is. 220 as a freshman. This guy's big. Going on to Thiero. Started 19 of 25 games last year. You don't really talk, when you talk about Kentucky last year, you're not talking about Adou Thiero all that much. Well, guess what? We are. We are. I love this guy, Adou Thiero. I mean, we're going to do a little bit of a team predictions later. Little hint from me. I love this guy. And to put a little bit in perspective, just some quick numbers. Thiero's rebounding percentage last year, his offensive rebounding percentage was 8.3%. That's what Mekhi Mitchell's was. Trevon Brazile's was 7.9. Thiero's going to be one of the best offensive rebounders in the SEC next year. Probably going to be the best on Arkansas. So this the addition of Thiero is huge. It's a lot bigger than most people think. And then as for Brazile, remember last year when we were like, what is Brazile's role? Like, what is he doing here? Is he a wing that's supposed to break guys down off the dribble and be a creator? Like, what are we doing with Brazile? I think this year being like more locked into that rim runner, lob threat, block threat, rim protector, and kind of honing in on what Trevon Brazile's good at. Maybe a little pick and pop here and there. But I feel like last year he was just misused completely. And I feel like he's bought back into that role now.
Yep, I'm with you. I think that we're really going to. I'm curious again. And Cal with big men, I think, is always kind of a fascinating thing, too, because we
Yeah.
know, like we said, he certainly has developed great guards, but you just look back at historically at some of just the great big men that have thrived, who certainly came in very talented, but when you just kind of
Yeah.
look at how they were able to succeed on those teams in particular, I'm curious to see how it works out for this big group here in the front court with Arkansas. Got the size, and yeah, I think gives them ability to play multiple kind of positions and rotations here for Cal and company. So, all right, we're going to give you our X Factors MVPs. Max, I am willing to bet you that we are going to pick the exact same X Factor.
Well, you already know who mine is.
It's going to be Adou Thiero. Like,
Yep.
there's just no question. And yeah, he's mine too. And we don't always pick the same, but I think this one's pretty simple for us. I just think, again, it goes back to where we started this conversation. If they're going to be a top 10 defensive team, they're going to need some other guys to help out too. But like, this is going to be the guy that carries them in terms of his defensive ability. But I'm also just as intrigued to see offensively how he continues to develop, because he has had some impressive offensive performances before. And so I'm curious on this team where he's not going to necessarily need to be the first option by any means. What kind of complementary production does he add on the offensive side, because he is going to be the guy defensively, I think, that makes them go. So yeah, I think that was a pretty easy choice for us.
Yep, you pretty much nailed it. Probably one of my favorite guys in the SEC, just based on how he plays. And I feel like I didn't do it. I did not do it. But I was thinking before the episode, do I make him my MVP? Oh, I know you can't do it. But I am very high on him. I think he could be. When you talk about most valuable and what they bring, he's just so important to a team. I think of last year. I almost think of Texas A&M when Solo Washington was out for a while, and then he comes back and their defense just goes through the roof, and you're like, wow, kind of his role is a lot more important to this team than I thought. I feel like that's exactly what Adou Thiero is going to be for this team.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so that now leads us to a team MVP. We may have the same choice here too, because I really, and look, this is not to knock him, but like, I try to convince myself to make it Jonas Aidoo, because I've always been a big Jonas Aidoo guy. I know he struggled in some of the games, last year against some of the better teams, but I still think that, man, what he brings to the table, like, you can't exactly teach some of the things he can do with the size and just his ability to impact the game on both ends of the floor. But I'm going to go Johnell Davis. I think that he's the guy that, like we said, should lead this team in scoring most likely. And I just think that, down to a minute to go in the game and Arkansas is down 4, he's the kind of guy that I think he's getting the ball, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't wind up being that guy that, first team All SEC, which Arkansas could have multiple on this team. But I feel pretty confident in his ability to be able to make a huge impact. So.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a no-brainer preseason first team when we give out our awards for the preseason. But I talked about his defense real quick earlier. These are his numbers from 3 in conference play the past 2 years. In Conference USA, 40.8%. And then in the American last year, 44%. So when the competition gets harder, he gets better. I don't know how he does it, but he does. And he's done it a few years in a row now. So, yep. No doubter MVP from me, Johnell Davis.
You heard it here first. Johnell Davis shooting 50% from 3 this year, according to Max. You do the escalation of the numbers there. So.
Hey.
All right, now to our predictions for Arkansas. As we always do, we're going to give you kind of, best case, worst case type deal. Look, best case scenario, we do this each year. This is a team that can win the SEC. Agreed, Max?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's best. Yeah. I think that's fair. Like, some teams we're going to say, you know what, they probably cannot win the SEC. But this team can win the SEC. Like, that is certainly a team that can win the league. Where do we have them in our, I think 4th or 5th in our summer composite rankings that we did?
I believe 4th.
4th? Yeah. So I think there's a decent chance they could move up by the time we do our official preseason rankings here in several weeks. It's possible. We'll see how it goes. We're not the only ones that vote in our staff composite rankings, but I think, again, that there's certainly the upside for this team to win the SEC, make a Final Four, do all those things that people expect from a John Calipari team. Now, if it goes wrong, Max, if we're just playing, the other side of this, I think there's so much talent on the roster that, I guess here's the thing. If you say that, things are going to go wrong, I still don't know that they go wrong necessarily in the regular season. I still think it's one where maybe they get into an NCAA tournament. all of a sudden you're like, all right, this is Cal's chance to get beyond, the big bad,
Yep.
monster
Yep.
of making it out of the first weekend, and then they just lose again or something, right? I mean, I still think this is the team that I just do not see with the pieces they have in place, barring, I will say this, barring, a significant injury or something,
Right. Right.
in one of these key spots. Yeah, I mean, I think this team, I cannot imagine Max finishes as a non-NCAA tournament team. Like, I think they're definitely an NCAA tournament team. But again, if you're saying worst case scenario, what's the area, Max? Like, where are we look at and say, do they not shoot it well enough? Do they? I don't know. Like, what is it? I guess.
Well, when you look at Jonas Aidoo, he was on Tennessee for 3 years. Tennessee's adjusted defensive efficiency was third, first, and third. Jonas
Yeah.
Aidoo is his team has not, as the anchor of the defense, Jonas Aidoo's team has not finished outside the top 3 nationally in defense. So I think if this goes wrong, I don't think it's the front court. I don't think it's the front court. I think you trust an experienced Adou in Brazil in a massive jump from Adou Thiero from his freshman year to last year, and I think he just continues. So I do not think it's the front court. I think if this goes wrong, I think it's the shooting in the backcourt. Maybe DJ Wagner is still very inconsistent with his shot. Had a few game stretches last year where he'd go 2, 3, 4 games without making a three. Maybe Boogie Flan's physicality is really not there, and he's just getting crushed on the defensive end. There's not a lot of depth behind Johnell Davis. Is he playing 40 minutes a game and then getting late into the game and the shot is just coming up short? I think that's where we could see it. I think the more questions are in the backcourt. I trust this front court 100%. I trust it. So I think best case scenario, I think they could, if everything clicks together, you could be looking at one of the top seeds in the NCAA tournament, winning the SEC. Worst case scenario, I think the front court really carries this team, and the backcourt is the Achilles heel, and maybe you're looking at a lower single digit seed, and you might get a tough 6-11, 7-10 matchup where it's like, oh boy, we better win this first round game. But I really can't see it getting much worse than that. I can't see it.
Well, we'll see what happens. The Arkansas Razorbacks, again, one of the more interesting teams in college basketball heading into the 24-25 season, with John Calipari leading the way in Fayetteville. And, of course, we'll have it all covered here at Southeastern 16, SEC basketball coverage wall-to-wall throughout the season here. So, again, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. That helps us out. And, yeah, it's what do you got, Max?
We got an exhibition against Kansas. I just want to say this. It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough, okay? It's going to be rough. I think there might be a little bit of growing pains in the beginning, but I'm not worried. Not worried. Just want to put that out there because there's going to be a little reaction after the Kansas footage gets coming out and DeJuan Harris and company is looking amazing. It's going to be okay. I'll put that out there.
We'll have Max react to that in real time in terms of this exhibition game. And we'll share our thoughts on that as well. So we appreciate you guys watching as always. Check out everything else here on the channel, SEC football, baseball as well. And again, thanks as always for watching. We'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern.